Thank you. Our apology for the late start. We just needed a few items that needed some clarification, so we appreciate your patience. We do have a ground rule here for the town council that we will put our cell phones on silence, and there's no texting in the town chambers, with the exception of the police chief who's not here, and obviously the media and the town clerk. So, with that said, I'd like to call to order the Town Council regular session. It is 7:15 and the date is Monday, April 30th. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we please have the roll call? Dale.
Council President Whaley.
Present.
Council Vice President McAtee.
Here.
Councilwoman Eddy.
Here.
Councilwoman Fogarty.
Here.
Councilman O'Neill.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you, Dale. To start, we have a public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider the following petition and to adopt the Town Council's final budget for 2012-2013, as shown on Exhibit 1 attached here too, and it's been amended. And it is, in quotation, shall line item number 1370, entitled Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce, and the amount of $7,000 be decreased by the sum of $7,000 to the amount of $0 for the purpose of prohibiting taxpayer money from being distributed to an organization that has formed a political action committee. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm going to ask if there, Steve, would you like to speak on it, or Dale?
I'm in receipt of a communication email received today that was asked to be read into the record. Dear South Kingstown Town Council, I am unable to attend the meeting tonight due to a scheduled work commitment. I would respectfully ask that the town clerk read this correspondence into the record on my behalf. I submitted a petition to remove $7,000 from the preliminary budget because I feel that no taxpayer money should be given to a political organization. By forming a PAC with little or no separation from the chamber itself and becoming actively involved in local politics, they forfeited their right to receive money from the taxpayers. According to the Articles of Incorporation documents for the Chamber of Commerce filed with the Secretary of State, no substantial part of the activities of the corporation shall be the carrying on of propaganda or otherwise attempting to influence legislation, and the corporation shall not participate in or intervene in, including the publication and distribution of statements, any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for public office. The formation of a PAC sidesteps these prohibitions. The South Kingstown Chamber endorsed candidates, contributed money, and in-kind donations in the forms of advertisements in local papers to assist local candidates during the 2010 election. In a democracy, appearances, not just actual conflicts of interest, are important. That's because what is at stake is the public trust. If the public does not have confidence that their elected officials are making decisions objectively and without bias to favor of some particular people or constituencies with whom they have close relationships, the public will lose their trust in government officials. There have several instances where some members of the town council have demonstrated preferential treatment for the chamber. It began with the improper granting of a tax abatement in January. Fortunately, the legality of the vote was questioned and ultimately rescinded. The chamber then requested an 11th hour funding grant, which was fast-tracked into the budget process by the town council president. I, as a taxpayer, was forced to pull a petition to reverse the approved grant. The petition represents a cross-section of registered voters and exceeds the town charter minimum of 25 signatures needed. The use of taxpayer money is not appropriate. I respectfully ask that the town council remove the funding allocated for the Chamber of Commerce. Sincerely, Deborah Bergner.
Thank you, Dale. Steve, did you want to add anything before I move on to questions here at the town council table?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. I'm going to start here at the town council table, and then I'm going to open the microphone for any kind of questions, comments, if there's anyone that would like to clarify any information. And then once I close the public comment, I'm going to come back one more time to the town council for any last-minute comments. At that point, the comments will be closed from the public, and then we will move to close the public hearing and then vote on this public hearing with the motion. Okay, with that said, are there any questions? We'll start with Mr. O'Neill.
In regards to this letter that we received, has Mrs. Bergner appointed a representative to represent her tonight that we know of?
Do we have a representative here from the petitioner?
I guess I am not actually representing her, but we have spoken today. If there's a question about her letter, I could probably clarify it.
Is that, is the question that you're asking if she specifically asked for someone to represent here, or do you want to clarify, Mr. O'Neill?
I think Mrs. Martin just answered it, that they do have their team here, Mrs. Fogarty, Mrs. Martin, and if any of the
Excuse me.
Bergners show up, so as far as I'm
I'll
concerned...
give you a chance. I'll give you a chance to
That's a
respond.
representation, so that's fine, so we'll
Thank you.
certainly ask the questions later.
All right, I think
And
that,
then I have a question for Steve Alford, if I may, Mrs. Whaley. When was this date established, Steve? When, how long ago, so on and so forth? Is this a surprise date for the final budget action tonight?
The entire budget schedule, I believe, goes back to our first meeting in December when we gave a draft schedule of events. And the April 30th date has not changed, to my knowledge, since the initial presentation of those dates.
And that's what I thought. So there's no surprise that this date was set pretty much in stone for the approval of the budget.
No, in fact, the charter requires that the budget be adopted by May 1st.
That's what I thought. So this is no surprise to the Bergners or others. Thank you.
Mrs. Fogarty, did you want to respond to anything?
Mrs. Bergner wrote this letter, if you will recall, Mr. O'Neill, that I have never said that the chamber should not get any money, or not the $7,000. As a matter of fact, I said that I think that they should get the $4,000, and I asked that we give $1,500 to the Downtown Merchant Association and to the Peacedale Revitalization. So to lump me in to say that they do not want the $7,000 goes against everything that I've said at every council meeting. That's all I have to say. I don't appreciate being lumped in, or I really do not appreciate that, and I would respect you as the president of the council if you would step in if he tries to do something like that again through the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
All right, the way that I'm going to conduct this meeting, and we've set some ground rules, and we've had some collaboration with the town solicitor in discussing this, and as long as people go through the chair, they have freedom of speech to state what they believe, as long as they do it respectfully, and there will also be an opportunity for anyone at the town council that disagrees with what's said. So that's how the meeting's going to be run, and everybody will have their say, and I will make sure that it's done respectfully.
Thank you.
So the questions, any comments here at the table? Mrs. Eddy.
Ella, Mrs. Whaley, I did not vote for this $7,000 for the Chamber of Commerce because I've never really quite known what they did, and I have no reason to think that they have. I know they have a great many problems right now, and I think that we as a council did vote on the budget, and we did decide they should get $7,000. Ultimately, it was not, I didn't vote for it, but I certainly voted for the budget, which included this $7,000. So I would go ahead and still vote for that. But I hope they do something to improve what they can do for the businesses in town in the future.
Do we have, Polly, could I just ask you to restate that? You said that you were voting to support, not giving the 7,000,
I am
or the
not voting
7,000?
for this, I'm not voting for this petition.
Any other questions? I think it was Carol and then Jim.
I want to address this letter. I mean, she's not here, and I think, you know, for whatever reason, she says it's work, but I believe a petitioner should be available for the town council to question the petitioner who gathered all this information, who feels that the issue is so important. And now we're not allowed to, we're not afforded the right to ask her questions as to why it is so important. And that just goes further for me. I think way too much has been made of this issue so far. I mean, this town council, before I was here, for 21 years has been giving the Chamber of Commerce $7,000. And what I don't understand is, when did it happen that a community who's so reliant on tourism finds it so repugnant to support their local Chamber of Commerce? I mean, I just don't even understand it anymore. So I think way too much has been made of it. And this letter, I mean, the facts are wrong. The town council has demonstrated preferential treatment for the chamber, certain members. Improper granting of a tax abatement in January, that was not an improper granting of a tax abatement. That was a very proper legal granting. The chamber decided to rescind their request basically because of the problems associated with the media coverage of this and the, you know, all the to-do about it. Quite honestly, when we were giving the tax abatement, it was about $6,800 that they were going to get in lieu of the 7. So in my mind, it was exchanging one, it was still the same amount of money. I mean, just coming out in a different way. So now we're giving them the 7,000, which has historically been what's done here. And I don't understand what the problem is. And I look at these signatures, and I see that 40 signatures have been gathered by a person who doesn't even live in South Kingstown. I don't even understand why a person from Richmond would be so interested in this $7,000 going to the South Kingstown Chamber of Commerce and the budget in South Kingstown. So that's a question I'd like to ask, and that should be asked to Ms. Bergner, because she's in charge of this thing. I can only conclude that this issue is totally politically motivated. I can't even come up with another reason. I don't know, I'll probably have more to say about the whole thing. I mean, the $7,000 is not going to a political action committee. That is a separate organization from the Chamber of Commerce. It's a separate entity, different board of directors. The $7,000 goes to the Chamber of Commerce. We are supporting small businesses that bring in money, hotel tax money for the town, meal tax money for the town, keep the community thriving. I mean, $7,000 to continue to support small businesses in this town, I don't understand what the problem is. Again, that's all I can say. I just keep coming back to the same thing. So, with that said, I mean, obviously, I'm going to support the continuation of the $7,000 in the budget, and I will not support the petition. I don't think it's reflective of what the majority of the South Kingstown residents feel. And I think too much is being made of it.
I would just like to piggyback on a question, just to make sure that there's nobody in the audience. Is that John Kingsley from Richmond, who was one of the people that circulated that petition? Is he present tonight? All right, I didn't know if he wanted to speak, so. Any further questions here at the table? Jim?
I'm really saddened that Mrs. Bergen's not here tonight, because she has spent every living waking hour, either with the Ethics Commission, boards, coming to these meetings, online, you name it. And all of a sudden, this date that has been cast in stone for years, she's not here tonight, the letter's pathetic. The commentary is more than pathetic. And the fact is, when she circulated this petition, she should have showed the other side of the equation. She should have showed the good side of the chamber. She should have showed what our neighboring towns and communities give to their chambers. And so the petition was not reflective of any balance whatsoever, of any fairness. And I will make a few comments here because, and I'm sorry she's not here tonight because I would have waived the name recognition for this evening. For 12 years, she's been pounding away and pummeling on me, and whether it's letters to the editor, online, emails, front row seats with cameras, I've put up with this. My former presidents have put up with allowing them to do that. I say them, Mrs. Bergner and the chairman of the South Kingstown Democratic Party. 12 years of this stuff, but it's their constitutional right to do it. Somehow or another, I dared run for office 12 years ago, and that has brought in such hatred as to be unimaginable. And when you have somebody like Barbara Hackey, who had enough class and fairness to allow me the presidency back in 2000 because of my large vote premium, that shows you the kind of good Democrats we should have here in town. And frankly, that's what this petition is all about, the $7,000. It's all about who's president and vice president of this council. And I think the public has learned after the last year and a half, 2 years, that we have the right management for this town. 0% tax increase this year. Community involvement. I've never seen a council more involved, more caring of a community than that led by Mrs. Whaley and Mrs. McEntee. And I want to bring up a couple facts here that really have got me disturbed here. One, to take out the $7,000 hit on the chamber is pathetic. But where was Mrs. Bergner last year when we approved $7,000 for the chamber? Same budget season last year, press. Where was she? No argument, nothing. $7,000. So all of a sudden now, a couple $100 contributions and recommendations, all of a sudden she pulls a Rip Van Winkle. $7,000 all these other years, and all of a sudden this year, nothing but politics, please. How ridiculous. And let's take a look at what else has happened politically here. Why isn't she challenging Mrs. Fogarty's right to vote on the budget in the school committee part of the budget up at this council? Think about it. $55 million that the NEA, town and schools, part of our budget, salary, all the benefits, etc. $55 million. We're talking $7,000, $55 million. And why does this matter? Well, fortunately, we have this wonderful email from John Leidecker, executive director of the NEA, after his recent promotion for his conviction of cyber stalking. And I want to read a couple things here, and I'm going to quote Mr. Leidecker, and specifically make this directed to Mrs. Fogarty.
Excuse me, could you just wait 1 second, Jim? We have some concerns here at the table. Kathy, do you want to go first?
I don't really understand what this has to do. Deb Bergner wrote a letter. Deb Bergner, not Kathy Fogarty. I have already talked to you about my stance and what I've said, and I will continue to say what I talked about with the chamber, and we've passed the preliminary budget. I voted on it. I just asked that we spend $1,500 on the Peacedale revitalization in the Downtown Merchants Association. And I don't know what you have to say about John Leidecker, but John Leidecker is no friend of mine. I have no relations with John Leidecker. I know you're going to go on and say it, but I really think as a president of the council that really, is this really necessary? I did not write this letter. I've already voted in the preliminary budget. It's up to you, Ella, on where you want to let this go.
Polly?
I'm sorry that Jim has gotten so hot and heavy over this, but I really think that we should stick to the letter, and I think we should, discuss just what's in the letter and the $7,000.
Well, I think you ought to let me finish with the quotes here, because it's be self-explanatory why this is totally political and should not be in front of this council.
Jim, if you can continue with sticking to the letter and sticking to the budget, then, you have the right to do that.
Well, this has to do with the budget, because I don't think Mrs. Fogarty should be voting on the budget tonight. And the reason for that is, and I'm quoting here, right from a letter received by the town manager, and I'm just going to use Mrs. Fogarty here. Mrs. Fogarty sought and received
Excuse
union
me.
endorsements.
Holly, if I could just state that if he has a direct avenue that he's taken concerned about the budget with another town council member, I cannot stop him from talking with the freedom of the right First Amendment. So,
This
as
has nothing to
long-
do with what we're talking about. We're talking about Deb Bergner's letter. How did it go to me? And something John Lydecker, who I barely even have ever spoken to in my life, I don't know what he's going to say. It has nothing to do with this letter about the chamber. This is just a train going off the track again.
Mrs. Fogarty, back on
Go ahead,
January
Jim. Go ahead and
23rd,
read it.
back on 23rd, you wanted us to go forth. You said the $7,000 no, and you waited till the end of the meeting to pounce on the $100 contribution and the membership, everything else.
Yes,
This
yes,
has to
I
do with the
wanted it to
budget,
be
and I'm going to
public
go
record.
forward with it, or I'll do it out there.
Go
Or you
ahead,
can
Jim.
close this meeting down. I'm going forward with my
Go right ahead,
comments.
Jim, go ahead. This is just.
Then keep quiet,
continue.
Kathy,
as
please.
long as it
Continue.
sticks to the budget, Jim, you have the right to continue.
All right, starting again from Mr. Lydecker. And this has to do with the budget and the $7,000. And who gets to vote up here? Who gets money from PACs, active PACs, active PACs? And from Mr. Lydecker, and I'm quoting, Mrs. Fogarty sought and received union endorsements. Union members campaigned on her behalf. That's worth thousands of dollars. And in Fogarty's case, she received extra help when, through a miscommunication, her name was inadvertently left off the endorsement notice. In fact, the NERI president called NERI members on her behalf, and a second card was sent out noting her endorsement. Thousands and thousands of dollars of value. I want to know why she is allowed to vote on this budget. And this has the same, we're talking $7,000, $55 million. Why is she allowed to vote on this budget when she should have recused herself from budgets? All of our budgets and the school committee budgets.
If that,
I'm going to allow
Can
Kathy
we
and then
recognize?
Carol. Yeah?
if that is the case, Jim, then starting with Polly, Ella, Carol, and myself, none of us can vote tonight. If you want to follow that through to its logical conclusion, they received NEA endorsements just as I received NEA endorsements. You have not, Mr. O'Neill. You would be the only one who would be able to vote on this budget. So if you want me not to vote on that as your grounds, then the other three alongside of me cannot. Okay? I just want to make sure that you're
Yep,
clear
and
on
I'm
that.
going to go to Carol, and I'm very glad that we are having a very civil conversation here, so I'm hoping that this keeps going. Carol?
I'm going to refer to a memorandum from Mike Ursillo dated March 19th, 2012. He's our town solicitor, as you all may know. At recent council meetings, ethics issues have been raised by Deb Bergner with regard to council members having a potential conflict of interest in connection with the pilot agreement with the Chamber of Commerce. These allegations were based on the fact that certain council members had received endorsements and/or donations from the chamber. Now, this is as it relates to that, and this would relate to any endorsement and any donation. I've reviewed and this is Mike Ursillo's letter, that he reviewed the Rhode Island Code of Ethics as well as advisory opinions issued by the Ethics Commission and advised as follows. Campaign contributions are specifically excluded from prohibited activities subject to the ethics rules. So consequently, in Mr. Ursillo's opinion, a councilor would not be in violation of the Code of Ethics based upon a contribution being made to their political campaign. So with that said, all of us can vote, I mean, as far as that's concerned. Any contribution is not going to knock us out of voting on anything. And that's why we can vote on this with the Chamber of Commerce. That's why Kathy can vote, and we all can vote on the school budget. Otherwise, we couldn't even sit here. So, I mean, the issue is, yes, we can vote. No, there's not a conflict. And whether you've received an endorsement or a contribution, you can still vote. So, Jim, all I can do is refer you to March 19th, Mike Ursillo's letter. I think we have to just...
And I have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Kathy?
And I have never received a contribution from the NEA. Most of, you can go back and look at any of my contributions that I've ever received, and most of them are from my neighbors and friends who live in the town of South Kingstown or some of my family members. And that is it.
I appreciate that, but this is right from the NEA saying how hard they worked for you, and when I went online,
Of us.
there's no in-kind contributions on there, Kathy. But anyway,
I
I don't
get
care
from my
about that.
neighbors.
The point is, what Mrs. McEntee brought up, and what I have brought up, Mrs. McEntee and I have said before, if we listened to this garbage on this petition, none of us would be able to vote on anything. Carol McEntee and I said that meeting after meeting from January 23rd, that's how ridiculous this whole issue with the chamber money is. That's why I bring it up, just to show the level of inconsequence this has, that we'd have no one that could ever vote again on anything. Good grief, that's why I said this. Now do you understand how ridiculous it is for the 7,000? Because otherwise, her in-kind contributions would absolutely disqualify her from voting on the school
And the
budget
other-
or this
and the
total
other
budget.
three also.
$55 million versus $7,000. But anyway, let me go on with just a couple other things. Because we were told to go forth by Mrs. Bergner, Mrs. Martin, Mrs. Fogarty, go forth and raise other money. And so what I did was obviously call all the local chambers, because you should compare apples to apples. Westerly has $38,000 for their chamber. Narragansett, $15,000. Narragansett has half the population. Maybe we should be giving our chamber $30,000. Westerly has slightly less population, less $38,000. Maybe we should be giving our chamber $42,000. North Kingstown, $15,000 they give to their chamber. Newport gives the equivalent of about $10,000, but they get hundreds of thousands of dollars more with a special deal on hotel tax, so on and so forth. This is the big business, and we frankly are really not being fair to our chamber with a $7,000 contribution. It's about as minimal as we could possibly get away with. I'm almost embarrassed at how little we give to them, because we must remember the chamber's job is to promote business and commerce. Business and commerce brings us jobs. Jobs bring salaries. Salaries bring community members. Community members with jobs can pay property taxes. Property taxes pay for schools, for infrastructure. This is absolutely obscene, this petition, and the whole effort of which we have probably spent hundreds of hours on this issue, probably thousands of dollars of everybody just scrambling around here on something that we never had to apologize for, that we had every right to vote on. So it is something that I will certainly dismiss this petition as totally absent of anything that this council should consider. And I would really hope that next year we start considering giving more money to the chamber, because they certainly well deserve it when you compare what our brethren communities are offering to their chambers. Thank you, Mrs. Whaling.
Further comments here at the table?
I just want to say one thing, and I didn't get a chance to look at all the different communities, but down in Westerly, a friend of mine is on the Chamber of Commerce, and they give the meal tax money and hotel tax money to them. And that is their issue, if that's the way that they want to do their bills. We've recited many times about the meal tax and the hotel tax and why we use it here as the town council. So that has to be factored into some of this story that we're talking about up here.
Point is, it's not even close what we give our chamber.
just
Not
saying,
even
that's
close,
what they-
Mrs. Fogarty. Give me numbers. You never brought this up before when you told
stating.
us to go forth to northern Rhode Island. How about
They
southern
sh-
Rhode Island communities, Mrs.
Ella-
Fogarty?
Ella, put 'em in.
Excuse me.
Boy,
Jim?
I tell you, you
I'm
you
just
really...
saying, a friend of mine happened to tell me that's what
Oh,
they did.
yeah, well, where
All
were
right,
you over the
we're gonna
last
go
4
through the
months,
chair
Mrs.
here.
Fogarty's?
We're going to go through the chair. I have not responded to the letter, and I also, in agreement with Mrs. McEntee, that there are definitely inaccuracies with Ms. Bergner's letter. It's you know, the chamber, the requested an 11th hour funding grant that was fast-tracked into the budget process by the town council president, okay? I'm really offended by that. That letter was delivered here in time to make the agenda. We have stated that time and time again, meeting after meeting. There was also an altercation in the town chambers that night, and that has been clarified over and over again. So I'm really baffled, if it's been clarified at different meetings, why it still comes forward in a letter. I don't know how many times that we can clarify that, and we're still getting much of the same. So when that letter was received by the chamber in time to meet the deadline for the Monday meeting, it was treated like any other letter, and there was no fast track into the budget process by the town council president. I also have a couple of other inaccuracies here in this letter, and I'm hoping that they will be addressed maybe by some of the Chamber of Commerce people in reference to what a political action is, and it is separate from the chamber. I know that they read that online, so I'm hoping that that does get clarified, but there's 2 or 3 definitely inaccurate pieces of information in this letter, so I do not want to go without correcting that. Any further comments here at the table before we open it for public comment? Okay, I'm going to hold my comments until I hear from the public, and then I'm going to inform the public how I plan on voting. Carol?
I just have one more point I'd like to make about this letter. Not only did it get sent to the town council, but it got sent to it was CC'd to Liz Boardman of The Independent, Erin Tiernan from Patch.com, and Kathleen McKiernan of the Narragansett Times. Now, I find that rather questionable that you send a letter to the town council because it's so important, but it goes right to the media. It seems to be a purpose that's underneath all of this, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but it certainly has nothing to do with the $7,000. If you're really concerned with the $7,000 going to the chamber, you wouldn't fire off this letter at today's date and send it to the media without even coming to hear how the council is going to vote.
Thank you. Any further comments here at the table? At this time, I'm going to open the microphone for any kind of public comment. I don't know if please come to the mic and please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is, Maureen Martin, 271 Warden's Pond Road, South Kingstown resident for 100 years or so, it seems. I'd like to, before I make my comments regarding the $7,000 issue, I'd like to comment on the comments that were made, and with all due respect to your new guidelines or whatever your code of ethics that we're working under now is, it seems like we've lost control of that already. And as I sit here as a citizen coming forward, as I have a right to do, I must say that I feel totally disrespected already. And I think Councilman O'Neill has shown absolute disrespect for another citizen who has written in her opinion about something which she has a right to do, and referred to it as pathetic. That is not what I call civil discourse. And to refer to the petition that about several dozen South Kingstown residents signed as pathetic is in of itself pathetic. And I think that you should have taken some more control over that. I would have appreciated it. And I know we're new at this, but I think that that's a perfect example. And when you go back and watch this taped version, Madam Chair, you're going to see how out of control it was, and that he was allowed to say those kind of things, and then there was bantering back and forth. And then I'd like to make a point about this analogy that Mr. O'Neill keeps bringing up about the chamber, giving money to the chamber and giving money to the school. Well, the school is not NEA. The school budget goes to the school. Those are the children that we all have and that we are all responsible for, with or without NEA. NEA is simply the labor union that represents the employees who work there, have nothing to do with the budget whatsoever.
It's taxpayer money, and I can't
Excuse me,
correct
Jim.
you. I can
Jim.
correct you. It's taxpayer
No,
money.
you cannot correct me. You can
being
speak
corrected.
to the chairperson, just as I am.
And I would just like to respond, Mrs. Martin, before you continue, if that's okay with you. Okay, we had this whole conversation with our town solicitor, and I don't think that Mr. O'Neill has been disrespectful. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I do not feel that way. He has been advised, as well as the 5 of us here by the town solicitor, that if we get a piece of information that we disagree with, we are to go through the chair and, as the town solicitor put it that day, it can go to town. So I think that Mr. O'Neill has used some words that were very strong, pathetic, but I don't think that it was crossing the line. So I respectfully disagree.
Well, let me say, Madam Chair, that if you don't think the town council member referring to a citizen who has sent in a letter as a pathetic, and several dozen citizens who have taken the time to sign a petition, which is their right to do, as obscene, then you have very low standards on what is civil. That's what I've got to say about that.
He's entitled to his opinion, and he kept it without using any profanities, and I have been advised by legal counsel that he didn't call anyone pathetic. He called the
letter somebody wrote.
The letter and the petition as obscene, okay? So I'm not going to
Unbelievable.
criticize someone on the adjectives that they use.
All right, so we have to do some good cuss words in order to get, to jump over the level of obscene here?
We're trying to keep that out of the town chambers.
All right,
So if you could
that's good
follow
to know.
that too, that would be great.
So then I'd like to say, as a tax-paying South Kingstown resident, I'm here to request that the $7,000 funding for the South Kingstown Chamber of Commerce that they have requested and that had been granted be removed from the budget line item 1370. I believe that my taxes would be better served in this community if they were instead granted to a genuine nonprofit charitable organization that provides direct services to people in need. The Chamber of Commerce is, by their own description on their website, a nonprofit organization financed on a voluntary basis, established to advance the commercial, financial, industrial, and civic interests of the community. They are not a charitable organization. I urge you to consider giving more support to those worthy organizations who came before you a few weeks ago talking about the services they provide to the neediest in our community. Just today, I read an article in the Providence Journal about the IRS complaint that the Good Government Group Common Cause is filing because taxpayer money is being used to support the American Legislative Exchange Council, something you might know as ALEC, a national business-backed group. Common Cause has filed a complaint with the IRS that alleges ALEC is spending money to lobby in violation of their tax-exempt status. The Providence Journal article goes on to say that because of the recent history of the several General Assembly members being convicted for being corrupted by their association with corporations, the issue of using taxpayer money is especially egregious. John Marion, the executive director of Common Cause, said in the article, "We don't want corporations or any group with interests before the legislature buying access to our legislators, much less the state paying for that to happen, or for tax-paying money being used." Now, I'm in no way saying that there is any form of corruption going on in the town of South Kingstown or with any of the town council members in front of me. But I think that this certainly has an appearance of impropriety, as has been brought up previously. So I do not think that taxpayers of South Kingstown should be footing the bill for the administrative costs of an organization that does not provide services to the needy, but instead participates in lobbying activities and has established a political action committee. I respectfully urge the council to eliminate the $7,000 line item in number 1370, as requested by several dozen registered South Kingstown voters who signed the petition that is the subject of this public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions here for Ms. Martin? Carol?
Maureen, if you don't mind, just like to ask you a question. I just wonder, I know Jim brought it up, last year at this time, we gave the $7,000 unanimously. Jim and I were both members of the chamber. Ella and I had been endorsed and received the $100 donation from them. And there was no conflict. You saw, and by your own admission just now, you've been a resident for many, 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 many years. And this has been going on for 21 years, and you have never come forward and felt that this appropriation should be challenged. Why this year?
Well, a couple of things, Carol. One is I didn't know. I admittedly have not been very involved in local politics. The other is that had I known, actually it might have been different because the chamber only started their PAC a year or 2 years ago, I believe. So previously they didn't have a political action committee in service. And it was actually quite a surprise. I really only came because of the tax abatement issue that came up in January, and I had heard about that and came to talk about that, and I was quite frankly, not too proud to admit, but was very surprised when they then testified that this was going to be a wash if they had the tax abatement instead. It was instead of the $7,000. And that's when I started to question that. I said, I didn't realize that we do that. And so for reasons stated previously and tonight, I don't think that's a good idea.
All right.
Any other questions for Ms. Martin? Mr. O'Neill?
Just, commentary about business, charitables and non-charitables. Interesting, a week ago, the governor announced that the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation and the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce were collaborating on a statewide effort as a catalyst for long-term job and business growth throughout Rhode Island. This is what it's all about, folks. A catalyst for long-term job and business growth throughout Rhode Island. This is how we get property taxes, through jobs and business and investment. Goes on to say here, the organizational change, the joint partnership is to share this story in a wider regional and national markets, an attractive package for business development and investment and job creation in Rhode Island.
Excuse me.
What else there is to comment on here. And, Mrs. Martin, the first time you did speak at the January 23rd meeting, you did bring up immediately the fact that the chamber, did it look like a labor union issue versus business? You brought up Engage Rhode Island, that they supported Engage Rhode Island. You connected dots between national, local, and Engage Rhode Island. And I can tell you honestly, if it weren't for that effort, if it weren't for the General Assembly, a majority of the membership, if it weren't for Engage Rhode Island, we'd be facing a financial Armageddon. And I just think that you're on the wrong track here with the importance of business and the importance that this money brings to this town and to this state through the chamber. And just like unions, you want one union representing a group. You don't want dozens of union management representing different members. The chamber, if you have a bunch of chambers representing the same folks, you really need one voice to really make clarity, make it work best. I don't care what side of the equation you're on, but I really thought that was the issue here. It was basically all politics, and frankly, I thank Engage Rhode Island. Right now, if we didn't have them, Ms. Martin, we would be $4,200,000 in the hole. And forget about what the 0% tax increase would be. That could be 50 jobs at $65,000 plus health care for a family plus pension contribution. 50 jobs. This could be tears and anguish up here. And a whole bunch of people did the right thing. And I don't think you did the right thing by damning the chamber and Engage Rhode Island. And I understand the position, the people you have to represent. But doggone it, it is all about math. Just as Mrs. Ramondo says, it is a math situation. It's all about the math. And this would be terrible if we had to lay off the amount of people if Engage Rhode Island wasn't as strong and as active and didn't work with many of the legislators to convince Rhode Island and the governor that this was the way to go. So I really think you're on the wrong track.
All right, and-
I appreciate the lecture, although I didn't think that was the process that you had spelled out, Madam Chair. I thought,
Our town solicitor said that as long as they tell the chair that they're going to address someone at the mic, absolutely, I cannot stop that. So,
well,
but you
if
can
I
address
could
back.
comment back that my comments on January 23rd regarding Engage Rhode Island was just to give an example, the best example I could think of off the top of my head, of the lobbying activities of the Chamber of Commerce, and that was their engagement in Engage Rhode Island. And I actually did not make it a labor issue. I had never at any point mentioned my affiliation with any labor group, and I understand my position sometimes brings a little attention to it in of itself, but I did not. I was here speaking as a long-term South Kingstown resident who's concerned about her taxes and where it's spent. And the issue was really made by other folks, so it was just an example. No, regardless, and I even said it that night, regardless of how you feel about the so-called pension reform, because I could argue with you all night long up here about the benefit of what happened last year, or how it could have been done another way without hurting so many people. But I don't think that's our subject for tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to refer back to any further questions before I take the next person on the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone is open for our next speaker.
Jonathan Daly LaBelle. A lot of things to cover. And
As long as we
It's-
keep it linked to the budget, we're good.
no, that's good. That's good. That's good. Well, I've written some things too, but I just want to share that I think the affiliations are important because at the start of this whole brouhaha, we had a state representative from NEA Rhode Island. I don't know what his position is, but he's either the second in command or third in command or something. So this is not, if it's not a political issue and it's not something that's being looked at across the state, then, I mean, people can figure that out. When one of the bigwigs from the state NEA shows up and he doesn't live in South Kingstown, then there's something afoot. So I think that speakers that come forward, if they do have affiliations, I think it's important for people to give a slight biography. And kind of the example that I use is, for myself, I have 5 children. So when I come in and you guys, I think we've had this conversation a little bit where, this is town council, it's not school committee, Jonathan. Well, I'm concerned about the schools. I've got 5 kids, And I don't get treated very well in school committee, so by default, I come and visit with you. Sorry about that. Town council, I actually, as I'm sitting here tonight, I saw, one town council member here, he had something to say, and he was actually, I I can't believe my world sometimes, It's like up is down and down is up. But I'm looking at this gentleman trying to just say what he's going to say. And he could be totally right, he could be totally wrong, it could be somewhere, give and take, okay? But people are trying to shut him down.
Absolutely.
Jim, just come through me.
I mean, free speech. You want to have a disagreement, have a disagreement. That's it. I wasn't at the meeting this past Monday, but I watched the tape, and so the person who has submitted the petition was talking last Monday. If people want to watch the replay, she's talking about stifling of First Amendment rights. And now here we are a week later, and here's this gentleman just trying to make his points. Again, totally right, totally wrong. Let people use your microphone, and the voters will decide. They'll figure it out, But they're trying to shut him down. So it's not about First Amendment rights. I think people know with the local Democratic Party, it's not about First Amendment rights. It's all about politics. And it is sad. And I think you go back some years, it didn't used to be that way. I don't know. Okay, so then, this whole thing with the cell phones, I mean, can you talk about a more picayune issue? Maybe cell phones should be used in town council, maybe they shouldn't. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you can just somehow tell me how that's going to be linked to the budget, Jonathan.
Well, I think it speaks to the motivation of the person that's submitting the petition, because I don't think this has anything to do with the budget.
Right, and if we can just keep away, I really would appreciate of any character analysis to.
Okay. All right, well, I guess I will just say, because I don't think, am I allowed to say that I don't think this has to do with the budget? I think this has to do with politics?
Well, if this was, a meeting that was comments from interested citizens, that would be the appropriate place. But seeing that this is a public hearing on the budget, I think that we should try to, keep it linked to the budget.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to flesh out, and maybe it has been fleshed out to some extent here, because you have an important vote to make, okay? So I think somebody's motivation to bring something forward, and I understand the character thing, but, if it's really all politics, I think that it needs to be considered that maybe this is not related to $7,000, and it actually has to do with politics, because that might be something you want to consider as to whether or not you want to support this petition or not.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just go, without going on too much further, over at school committee, okay, with all the budgets, that's where all the money is. Everybody knows that. I mean, that's across the state, 75, 80% of the budget that you guys are going to adopt one way or another tonight. 75 to 80% is the schools. So here's this big mess, this big brouhaha, that it's like a fake controversy over $7,000, when all the money, the real money, is being spent over at the school committee meetings, okay? And they have had, not financially corrupt, like not breaking the law corrupt, but they've had corrupt process, and so they've made all these decisions, these teacher firings, the administrator hirings, that's $250,000.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I just have a question with using the word corrupt with hiring administrators.
A corrupt process.
And I think that's probably your opinion, which I respect.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure that is the feel for, the town council here, that the school committee is using a corrupt process by hiring administrators. I think that we all have our thoughts about that individually. But I think that we here as town council members, the only, way that we can really affect the school committee is their line item budget transferred over to the school department. We have multiple budget hearings to get to that final line item, and we have no control over if they're going to hire administrators. We have had the discussion, it's been questioned here by town council members with their STEM coordinator, just science, technology, engineer, mathematics, and science, as well as their behavior specialist, but it really is out of the town council purview to micromanage the school committee on how they spend their dollars. So.
No, I understand that, but I guess where I'm coming from, and I'm not saying it's corrupt to hire administrators, but I do feel like the process is corrupt because they're not presenting both sides of the issue. As they're making these decisions, they're not probing, do they have enough talent within the school department that they don't need to hire the administrators? And if they don't have enough talent, Maybe they don't have the right people there. They did not flesh out, both sides of the issue, okay? But I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, that you do not have control of that, and that's not, I'm not trying to indicate that you do. Basically, what I'm trying to bring out is, as this petitioner is bringing forward this issue to this chamber, the money is in the school budget. And they're not following a good process, there's not good representation. They're going after picayune things with you, such as your cell phone policy and a texting policy. Meanwhile, over at school committee, they're rearranging their meeting schedule. They're making it so that the meetings are not recorded, so that they aren't available. They're shutting down members of the public. There was one meeting where there was hundreds, at least 800 people. They shut down a comment. Other people wanted to talk. I've been at a meeting where the school committee chair says to me while I'm speaking, "We get it." I got shut down, okay? So the only thing I'm trying to flesh out here is that if the petitioner is coming to you over $7,000, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars being affected on a meeting-by-meeting basis without a good process being followed at school committee. And also, they're not following procedural issues such as ability to talk to community members, meeting schedules, recording of meetings. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm trying to expose that there seems to be some hypocrisy from the standpoint that I'm looking at, that if they're looking at this in here, they really should be helping me with the heavy lifting over in the other chamber.
And I will further probe with a better process so that we can meet some of the questions that you have brought to the table as the town council to address with the school committee. We'll further probe that. Okay, Jonathan?
Okay, I appreciate that, and I know it's complicated, and if I was not clear in how I'm trying to present this,
I got it.
I can own that, okay? The final thing I will say is, I'm a Democrat, okay? And I'm proud of being a Democrat. And I think there's 4 Democrats up there, and there's different types of Democrats, okay? And,
Make sure this ties into the budget.
well, okay. For you to think about, I hope that this will be considered, that there's a realization that there are different type of Democrats, and I have great respect for the way that you're running the meeting,
Thank you.
and I don't think you deserve this.
Thank you.
And I hope that you and people who are friendly with you will consider that there are different kinds of Democrats, and you deserve better than how you've been treated.
Thank you. Any comments here before we go to our next speaker? Please come.
Kathleen Gorman, Acorn Court, Wakefield. 40-plus years a resident. 3 children went through the schools here. I'm not a native, but I consider myself a resident at least. I asked that the council not give the $7,000 to the Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. Note, they're not calling themselves South Kingstown anymore. They're not just representing our town. The chamber is not a charity. It is a self-promoting organization. Giving them tax dollars would set a precedent for all other affinity groups in town to expect tax breaks just because they incidentally give scholarships or make other charitable donations. I don't think this is appropriate. I object to it. I'm also saddened, which this is addition to my remarks, as a result of sitting here. I haven't been to a town council meeting in a long time. I am saddened at the way it has to work now. I am saddened as a petitioner to hear a council member say that that petition that I signed was pathetic. I think that council member needs a broader vocabulary. I object to his use of words, even if they aren't obscene. We deserve better than that. It's not encouraging people to use the democratic process, the petition process that was set up by this town. I'm really disheartened by that. Very disappointed.
Do we have any comments here at the table? Thank you, Kathleen.
Betty. My name is Phil. I live on Columbia Street. I'm sorry, I'm coming late to the conversation, but could I ask maybe a clarification question? Is that allowed?
That's great.
So are there any other organizations that have political action committees that are getting money from the town council? Or is this the only organization with a political action committee that's getting funding?
Steve or Alan or Dale?
I'm not aware of any organizations with political action committees that are receiving contributions from the town. I could stand corrected on that, but I'm not aware of any.
Philip, could you just spell your last name, please?
Oh, sure, Eden, E-D-E-N.
E-D-E-N.
Yeah. Yeah, F-I-L, F like Frank. So I think the point that Councilmember O'Neill was making, that Councilmember McEntee was making, that John was making, that this is a political discussion is then a very real point, because it's not about the $7,000. I mean, you guys have done a tremendous job keeping the property tax rate the same. I think the whole town owes you thanks for that. And $7,000 was not going to change this one way or the other. But this is about the politics of it. It's about the idea behind giving taxpayer money to an organization that lobbies. And I think that, you know, I wasn't aware of this before. This is the meeting I came to where we had the presentation on future infrastructure of transportation. Was the first that I'd heard about this. So I, you know, obviously read some old South County Independent articles and I'm trying to catch up. I feel that maybe the first time, the reason this is coming up now is because with Citizens United, with the national dialogue and the conversation about the role of money in our politics, it's becoming more of an issue in our town, how our taxpayer dollars in the town are directed towards organizations that engage in political activity. You know, I definitely appreciate what the council people have been saying today. I know it's a small sum of money, but I would ask that the council withdraw the $7,000 because this is a lobbying organization. That's not to undermine the role that the Chamber of Commerce plays in our town. My dad was a member of the Chamber for many years, and I definitely appreciate that. But it's a lobbying organization. If the Chamber of Commerce was to remove itself from lobbying, as happens in many municipalities around the state and around the country, local chambers don't engage in lobbying. I think it would be perfectly appropriate to give it the funding. While it's lobbying, it doesn't seem appropriate to me for, like Kathleen was saying, the precedent it sets, and for the statement it sets to the broader role that money plays in our democracy.
Thank you. Do you have any questions here for Philip? Philip, I don't know if you want to stay at the microphone. Mr. O'Neill has a question. I don't know if it's directed at you.
Well, not a question. I certainly appreciate you coming to the microphone. Once a week, full-page ad in the Providence paper, 597 lobbyists. Other ads, 340 active PACs. So not just did the chamber have a PAC, your teachers have a PAC. Probably the largest in the state. And they give money to everybody, not just Democrats, Republicans, governor, everybody. We're being run by money. I have a number of books I can recommend that you ought to read of how this nation and this state are run by lobbyists. And it is sad. You'll think the people would have the last voice, but we don't. It's very powerful. That's the way business is done. But there are many PACs that contribute somehow or another to our reps throughout our town, council members, so on and so forth. So, but I certainly appreciate you getting an interest in this.
Sure. And can I respond? There are lots and lots of organizations, and there's a debate going on nationally about the role of money in our politics. What I object to is taxpayer money going to a lobbying organization. I think it's very different. You know, obviously the NEA has a right to lobby and to give money to different elected officials. The Chamber of Commerce has that right. Any organization, I mean, has the right to contribute financially to politicians that agree with their views. My issue is with taxpayer money, with my money going to an organization that's lobbying for things.
But it's also taxpayer money going to the NEA.
Well, not directly. That's true, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Can I?
Carol?
Philip, just, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, but the PAC is separate from the actual Chamber of Commerce. And when we're talking about the $7,000 distribution to the Chamber, we're talking about the Chamber of Commerce and what it does for its members, what it does for tourism. It's not at all going to the PAC. None of that money gets commingled in any way. So the money that, whatever they raise in a PAC is raised separately, and it has a separate board of directors. It's a separate entity. I would hope one of the people here from the Chamber of Commerce would comment on all of this, so we could get a better feeling for this. But that is legally, there is a legal difference between these two entities.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely understand that. And I've actually worked on political campaigns, so I've seen firsthand how that works. You know, you have to be very careful with which line in the budget goes to which use. But at the end of the day, we're giving money to an organization. I mean, even if the organizations are technically separate, their interests are in line, the people are the same. And, you know, maybe they have different heads of the board of directors, but the organizations are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we can't make a legal distinction, I think, you know,
Well, you can make a legal distinction.
We can
Yeah.
make a clear legal distinction between the two. And even if, so because of that clear legal distinction, you can't say legally this is inappropriate, and that's a conversation that's being played out nationally. It feels as if, and I think we can all see that the organizations are the same, even if legally they're distinct. And maybe you guys disagree there.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
It's very clear in the law that they are very separate.
Sure, in the law,
Right.
but it's not clear in practice. Just like, you know, when I worked on the political campaign, it was very clear we did everything by the books legally. Were we doing something morally questionable? Like, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that somebody from the chamber will clarify that.
Sure. Great.
Thank you. Any other comments here at the table before we take our next speaker?
My name is Richard Pike, and I will speak on behalf of the Chamber, although the Chamber probably didn't ask me to, but the South Kingston Political Action Committee is an arm of the Chamber by law, but it is not a part of the Chamber per se. The board is completely separate from the board on the Chamber. It doesn't receive not one penny from the Chamber of Commerce. The $7,000, I can guarantee you not one penny would go towards the Political Action Committee. The Political Action Committee raises its funds from donations from private individuals, and anyone that's familiar with PACs know that you can't accept money from a corporation. It has to be from an individual. That's where the money came from. It came from individuals. We have a completely separate checking account. We file our taxes returns separately, and we did make contributions, but they were across the board. They weren't to Democrats, they weren't to Republicans. We just picked out people that we felt were business friendly and were going to help the business in town. And anybody that thinks it's not a good idea to help business really needs to wake up and listen to a couple of the TV things that are going on. Businesses are hurting. They need all the help they can get. Certainly municipalities, states, all forms of government are trying to attract as much business as they can and help business as much as they can. For someone to say they don't want to help business, to me, I don't know, understand what planet they may be living on, but until someone has a job, there's no teacher, because there's no money to pay a teacher until someone has a job and makes a living and can pay taxes. Until someone has a job, there's no one doing services like doing someone's laundry. I mean, someone has to have a job. Someone has to go out there and create jobs. And the businesses in this town that are trying to create jobs need all the help that they can get. The chamber is giving them all the help that we can. We're asking for the town, and we've asked the town to help us out with that, and the town has been very generous. And so I urge you to deny this petition and support the chamber as much as you can. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions here for Mr. Pike? Mike is out for another speaker. With that said, I'm going to close down the public comment and bring any last-minute comments here to the table before we close the public hearing. So are there any other comments here at the table? Kathy?
I'm just going to clarify my position through all of this, since I feel it was called into question, so I'm just going to say from the beginning.
That's good.
I was against the tax abatement, because even at $6,800, eventually, not this year, we have a flat increase. The tax will go past $7,000, and that's where we've always been. My concern also arose from back in a letter from Joe Iacocca back in the end of 2010 that was on the agenda in early 2011. I don't have it with me, but it was pulled for the tax abatement and then an extra $12,000 in funding, which concerned me. That is where I stand with the tax abatement. That has been taken care of and taken off the docket. So the $7,000, when that came up, that was approved. I had questions about the Christmas decorations. So that's where my concern was. I was clear about that in the past records, you'll see that I asked about the Christmas decorations. And that's where I thought some of the money might be more handy for the Downtown Merchants Association and Peacedale, for that matter, for them to use $1,500 and $1,500, which did not pass, and then I supported the budget. So I just want to do a quick reflection of where I stand with all of that. Okay? That's all.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to know, I am not going to support this, but I want to give a history of what, I want to be consistent on where I've stood, and that's a quick overview.
Anyone else want to speak? Jim?
And I brought up at those first meetings what our brethren towns were giving to their Chamber of Commerce's. And there is no question that we have a great deal, incredible benefit, and a great deal on behalf of the town for so little money that we put into the chamber. And there is no confusion here, because you're either pro-business or you're not. We know, just from all the numbers, that the chamber is well underfunded from what the town should be offering. We know the importance of business and investment and jobs and income and property taxes and schools and infrastructure. And I simply go back to a couple hearings that we had last year on La Strada Restaurant and Kachina Twist. And if any of you want to tune in for the most anti-business interrogation ever by a council member, specifically Mrs. Fogarty, I'd ask you to tune in to those meetings, and just to see the interrogation, and especially with La Strada Restaurant, when the board up here always says, go to it, good luck, wish you well. Her final comments were, we'll be watching you. That's anti-business, and that's where Mrs. Fogarty stands on this issue, folks.
All right, and I'm not sure how that ties into the budget, but Kathy, if you wanted to respond?
I really don't want to go tit for tat, but my own question with Lestrada was that I was questioning how many liquor licenses we were handing out, and I was concerned about the number of liquor licenses, which now we've even handed out more after that. That was the only thing that I was concerned about, and just, that was primarily it with Lestrada. I don't, and the other one with the
We're gonna
Kachina
just-
Twist, Jim, I don't want to get into it. I really don't. Let's just take the vote. I am pro-business. I am a businesswoman. I've been in business for almost 25 years in sales. I understand the importance of business. For you to try to portray that I am not a business person, that is wrong. I had concerns about the tax abatement. We've been doing it I've been doing it for 10 years. When the tax abatement came up, We had a $7,000 limit. It used to be 4, then it went to 7. My concern was that it was going over that, plus the request for 12,000 that was pulled from a budget, but I was afraid where it was going. And I was worried about other tax exempt businesses that we had gotten a letter about, that where the money could, how much money it could total up to. That is it. Please do not portray me as anti-business. I am pro-business. I think that we've worked with the chamber in the past to listen to the businesses. I know you're gonna come back firing at me here,
No,
but I am not anti-business.
Jim?
No one on this council, I've been here for 12 years, I'm the senior member. Anyone that's come here for a license, whether it's food, whether it's just retail, whatever it is, everyone has walked away with a good luck and a thank you. No one has ever heard those words, "We're going to be watching you." You are anti-business, and
All
you
right.
haven't told the truth about that.
Let's just move on here. Carol?
I just want to
Unless
say
Kathy wants to respond
one
back.
thing about when we were discussing the tax exemption, I believe the vote was to cap it at 7,000. So any problems that anybody had with the rising contribution or exemption rising, that was not going to be the case because it was capped at 7,000. So I just want to make that clear, that there was not going to be any event where it was going to go any higher than that.
Kathy?
And I just want to say, Carol's right, that we flushed that out, that it was not going to go to 7,000 through the discussion.
That's right.
I agree.
That's right. I'm going to wait till the end for my comments. Polly, did you want to say something before I speak?
No, I don't want to say a word.
I would just like to reiterate the clarification of the letter with the 3 concerns that I have with the letter. By forming a PAC with little or no separation from the chamber itself. So I'm glad that Mr. Pike has clarified that. When the chamber has formed a PAC, it is separate, separate checkbook. There is none of this, not one penny of the $7,000 that will be going into the PAC, and it's separate. So as the letter states, I believe that that's inaccurate information in the letter. The second piece of information, it began with the improper granting of the tax abatement in January. Okay, I think that that absolutely is incorrect information. The third is, fortunately, the legality of the vote was questioned and ultimately rescinded. We're really not sure why they rescinded that, so I'm not sure why Ms. Bergner is reading something into, unless she has further information that we don't have here at the town council table. And then the fourth item in this letter is the chamber then requests an 11th hour, which I've already addressed. That letter that was issued to the town council has been addressed. I don't know how many times, and I'm not quite sure why that's still being addressed. But I am going to support this. I have listened. I have come into the town chambers tonight with an open mind to listen to the public. I have gone through notes and extensive consideration and thought process, talking to many people out in the community, and I do agree with Carol Hagan McEntee. I'm not sure why this is an issue. There was a vote taken on this budget. It was not an issue. All of a sudden, it's an issue this year, and the only thing that I can think of is that there are different arrangements of seats here at the town council table. I am a big supporter of businesses here in town. I shop locally. I try not to leave because I know that that's going to go back and that's going to offset the property tax and help everybody living in this town. I feel as though we should be celebrating tonight with a 0% tax increase. And I am appalled that we've expended so much time and energy on something that, I'm sorry, I really cannot understand this. With all of the time and energy that has been expended by all parties, I'm hoping and I am publicly requesting that we work together. There is a lot of time being expended on things. If we work together, this town would be greater than it is. So back, I don't know if it was January, but I go to a lot of functions in this town. Every time there is a fundraiser for somebody in need, I'm the first one to buy a ticket and the first one there. And I can't tell you the number of raffle tickets, that I've bought from businesses that have given and given and given. So when I look at the Chamber of Commerce, I look at the individual businesses. I look at Paul Massey's, who donated our bikes to our police department. I look at the YMCA, who's a member of the Chamber, who just joined hands with our town and put together a whole Healthy Designs plan so that we can work together to make our community more walkable and more healthy for our community. I look at Wakefield Books, who works with, a needy population, who puts out our summer reading list. The Domestic Resource Violence Center. I look at the work that the Chamber has done with raising money for the Domestic Resource Violence Center in the past and giving charitable organizations. The Rotary Club, South Kingstown Partnership for Prevention, which is our substance abuse task force in town. South County Community Action, which helps our needy. The list goes on and on and on. South Kingstown Cares. The Goddard School partnered with committee that we formed, working with trying to set up some transition for helping some of the students who are not being successful at the high school and offering, and I believe that they're doing work with our Narragansett School Department. Our South Kingstown School Department is a member of the Chamber. URI, the Education Exchange, for those kids that do drop out and go to the Education Exchange and get their high school diploma. Theater by the Sea, Sosnowski Farm, Smithco Oil, Thunder Mist, the list goes on. So I am pro-business. I hope that people do shop in town. I will support this, and I'm hoping that we all look at what has happened in the past, we move forward, we continue to work together, because it is a great town, and I think the town does deserve better than this.
Ella, excuse me, you're supporting the budget, but you're not supporting the
I am
line
supporting
item.
the $7,000 to the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, but
So I am in opposition to
that letter.
to this letter.
Petition.
Okay, yeah, that's the way it read
To the
here.
petition.
Right.
Then we need to close the public hearing, right?
So, are there any further comments here at the table? Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I move we close the public hearing.
Second?
Now, I have a,
Vote on the
right, I'm just
public
going,
hearing.
right, I'm going to do that in 1 second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries 500 to close the public hearing. Now, we have this motion, can I have a motion, please?
What do you want to move?
Somebody just want to reread this? Make a motion to either support.
I move that we do not support the petition and that we support the budget inclusive of the 7,000, which includes line item number 1370, entitled Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce, and grant them the $7,000.
Second?
We have motion and second for the,
Excuse me, you really need to vote on the petition as presented. So a vote
Okay.
to oppose the position would be to oppose what's presented on your agenda. Because under the town charter, you're required to specifically address the question that's asked of you by the 25-plus signatures. So I would request that the council consider the resolution as presented there, and then there be a vote either in favor of cutting the 7,000 or opposing the 7,000.
Well, I move that we oppose the petition and
As
include...
presented. No.
As presented.
Second?
so opposing as presented, an aye vote would move forward with this petition to cut the 7,000.
No.
And
No.
an aye vote would,
Shall line item...
let me just reread. Right.
The question that's on the floor, if you want to give the money to the chamber, you vote no.
So we're opposing the position, the
That's right.
petition.
That's what I just said.
Right.
That's what I just
Okay,
said.
so that's the motion.
So to vote aye would be
Vote
To-
for the petition.
to oppose their position. That's not real.
All in favor of opposing the position, that's what you have to say.
Second.
No, no, no.
Yeah, to
We
me,
have
to
a
me,
motion.
it's not clear enough.
Yeah, it's double
It really,
negatives.
yeah, it's really not clear enough, so hold on.
Well, should we just read it as it's written
Line
here?
item 1370.
All right, shall line item number 1370, entitled Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $7,000, be decreased by the sum of $7,000 to the amount of $0 for the purpose of prohibiting taxpayer money from being distributed to an organization that has formed a political action committee.
Right. So a nay vote would be... Okay, so can we have motion to deny the petition?
I move that we deny the petition.
Second.
So an aye vote would give the $7,000. All right. So all in favor?
Of denying the petition.
All in favor of denying the petition?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstention? So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Council President Whaley.
Aye.
Council Vice President McAtee.
Aye.
Councilwoman Eddy.
Nay.
Councilwoman Fogarty.
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill.
Aye.
So motion carries 4-1-0. Thank you. Which brings us to new business. This is a resolution authorizing fund transfers as
Excuse me.
shown.
Excuse me, no, you have to adopt the budget at this point. The only thing you've acted on so far
Is the
is the
petition.
petition before you.
Okay.
You now have the town council's preliminary budget that was adopted on March 19th on the floor. The council needs to be able to adopt it. By denying the petition, you have before you the full budget as adopted by the council on March 19th. You need to have a resolution that would adopt that final budget for the 12-13 year as presented in Exhibit 1 of the agenda.
Shall I try it?
Go for it.
I move that we adopt the budget as presented. What was that date again?
2000.
What was the date we,
Just as presented in Exhibit 1 of this agenda.
as presented in Exhibit 1 of this agenda?
Second.
We have motion and second. Any further discussion? Polly?
Ella, it became clear to me today that I had to recuse myself from this vote, and the reason is voting on the budget, and the reason is that there is an item for Thunder Mist Health Center, and as you all know, I'm sure, I've been very active in Thunder Mist Health Center. I've been on president of the board, and I am now on the executive committee. It's inappropriate for a member of the executive committee or president of a board to vote when there is a financial item in the budget. This was not clear to me before. I've discussed it with our lawyer, who's not here tonight, but I talked to him by phone earlier today, and he recommended that I do something about it, and I discussed it with our manager, and he said, no, the only thing you really can do is not vote on the entire budget, because there is no way we can take out the $24,000 for Thunder Mist and then put it back without your voting on it. So although I worked hard on the budget and am very much in favor of it, I will recuse myself.
You're in favor of everything other than the transfer for the
Got it.
$24,000.
Yes, yeah,
You're not speaking to that issue, I would assume.
yes. Not at all. I wouldn't.
Thank you, Polly. Jim?
Yeah, I wish there was a way that Polly would not have to recuse herself, because the Thunder Mist does a lot of good work, like the Chamber of Commerce and the $250,000 we give to other agencies, inside and outside. I think, like I've seen on the zoning board, which you were part of for a while there, Polly, a lot of members sometimes say that they can make a fair rendering of a decision on a lot of those matters. And I think in a case like this, all the good that Thunder Mist does, I don't have a problem with you, with your membership on the board, executive committee,
I appreciate
voting
that,
this,
Jim. Thank
voting
you.
this way, because we've always been great supporters of Thunder Mist.
Yes, we
And
have.
of all the good they do. So I have no problem with Mrs. Eddy voting on this budget with her position on the board,
I
if
think
we're
I
allowed to
would-
do that.
Yeah, I think I would feel more comfortable just
Okay.
recusing myself on this vote.
Right. But I really think it's
Thank
such a positive organization. We've always given money to them. I really don't think you need
Yeah.
to, so I don't want you to recuse yourself.
And I don't get any money from it, but even so. We decided it would be this way.
All right, all right.
And we appreciate all the work that you put forth on the budget, Polly, and all the discussion. And although there may be a lot of times where there's disagreement at the table, you are one of the town council members that always rises and walks away respectfully, as though, even though we disagree. So we appreciate all the time. It's unfortunate that
Thank you.
it has come to this, and maybe we can work out a process in the future that this can be worked out. Carol?
Well, I'd just like to agree with Jim. I have no problem with Polly voting on this budget, because I think she has put a lot of work into the budget, as we all have, and she's also done some great work over at Thunder Mist, and I think she should stay there. So I certainly don't have a problem. I think you can vote on this budget without any bias, but it's your choice.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Polly, I've seen the work that Polly's done on Thunder Mist. As a matter of fact, I went to her last meeting that she held as president, and the accolades that came from the staff and the new director that Polly helped hire at Thunder Mist. Polly's done a great job at Thunder Mist. There's new facilities in West Warwick, up in their Woonsocket branch, and certainly what we've done down here. And since in my career, I have been to all three of them. I know the physicians. I see the patients. I've talked to Polly about this in the past. I've talked to some of the board members that they do God's work, because there's some tough people who kind of go in there and have not a dime to their name and are really looking for help. And I find it really sad that you can't vote on this budget because of all the great, great work that I've seen personally by Thunder Mist. So I'm sorry that you can't vote. And I appreciate all your hard work over all the 10 years on this council.
Thank you.
So I believe we do have a motion with Exhibit A as presented from Carol, and I believe it was seconded by Jim. Exhibit 1, did we have any further comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 1 recusal. So motion carries 4-1-1 with 4-0-0 with 1 recusal.
Could I ask, with the budget adoption, that this all be taken with roll calls on each of the 3 resolutions that will be before you?
Thank you. Roll call, please. Dale?
Council President Whaley.
Aye.
Council Vice President McAtee.
Aye.
Councilwoman Eddy.
I'm recusing.
Councilwoman Fogarty.
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill.
Aye.
So motion carries 4-0-0 with 1 recusal. Do you want me to go to Exhibit 2, Steve?
That's correct, under new business.
Yep.
Resolution
So
2.
a resolution authorizing fund transfers as shown on Exhibit 2, attached here too. And a resolution authorizing tax collection procedures as shown on Exhibit 3, attached here too. And I'm not going to read all through this, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
The Resolution 2 was presented within the warrant that went and was published in the newspaper. Resolution 2 is identical to what was in the warrant. Specifically, what it does is provides the finance director with the authorization to make fund transfers between the various 8 funds that are contained within the budget document. I don't think there's a need to read those unless there's specific questions from the floor as to any of the questions or resolutions presented, but certainly it's in the council's purview.
Any questions here at the table before I open it up to the public on Exhibit 2?
No.
Any questions here from the public on, as far as Exhibit 2 goes? Okay, so we have a motion.
I make a motion that we authorize the fund transfers as shown on Exhibit 2.
Second?
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? One recusal?
Okay, I wondered, Ella, I should recuse from
Does
this
she have to
too?
on this one?
Well, I think it, is there a need for a recusal on Exhibit 2, Steve?
See the need for that,
No.
not on that resolution.
All right,
That
so
would be
Paul,
all
you're
right.
with us?
I-
Okay,
yes.
so it's 500. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Council President Whaley?
Aye.
Council Vice President McAtee?
Aye.
Councilwoman Eddy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Fogarty? Aye. Councilman O'Neill?
Aye.
Thank you. Which then brings us to Exhibit 3,
This is B, yeah, Exhibit 3.
yeah, which I'm going to read.
The whole thing?
I know. I will read it, unless you,
Exhibit 3 provides the authorization for the finance director to direct through the collector of taxes the necessary tax levy. If you go to the first page of Exhibit 3, there is a blank as to the value of the tax levy. The tax levy should be set in an amount not more than, where the blank is, I would request that you place $66,400,000. The gross tax levy estimate at this point is $66,377,518. For us to be able to set the rate, we need some flexibility based on what the final arrived amount is on the taxable property roll and the value of the overlay. So if we set it at $66,400,000, we should be able to stay at the $14.51 rate. The other components of this resolution are, the first establishes the levy at the $66.4 million. The second paragraph establishes the 12% interest rate, and the quarterly payment schedule is presented in the third resolution. That third resolution also provides the 10 business days from the due date of the taxes to be provided as a grace period. The next resolution establishes procedures if the taxes are unpaid. And following that, the following resolutions provide the finance director with the ability to borrow and hire funds in advance of tax collections. Again, that resolution is there, but we have never had the need for tax anticipation notes. I'll be glad to answer any other questions, if there are any questions relative to the directions within the resolutions for Exhibit 3.
so would you like me to read it or no?
It's really the council's preference of whether you want to read that into the record or not.
Does anybody mind if I don't read it?
No, not at all.
Nope.
Okay. Do we have any questions here for Steve before we take a motion on Exhibit 3? Carol?
Steve, I just want to ask a question. I mean, we have a zero tax increase is what we're proposing, and with the $66,400,000 as the total tax that can be from real estate and tangible property, tangible personal property, and motor vehicle excise expenses and charges. So that's not going to change, is what you're saying? Only if the motor vehicle, my understanding is only if the motor vehicle tax changes at the legislative level.
The tax levy isn't going to change. The need is there. How the money comes to us, whether it's through the excise tax with motor vehicle versus whether it comes through the real estate rate, is what's determined. Once we get a final roll that's certified on June 15th, we would then set the rate. The only thing you don't do is you're not setting the tax rate this evening.
Okay.
You're simply establishing what the maximum dollar amount is that's necessary to fund the budget that you've adopted. So you adopt the need for the $66.4 million. If Gene were to find another $30 million in taxable property, the rate would be below the $14.51. If he were to come back to me and say on June 15th, we're losing $20 million that I didn't expect, we would have to raise the rate from $14.51 up 2 cents or 3 cents, whatever it is. Do I think that's going to happen? I think we're pretty close on what the roll will be at this time, but the rate isn't set until June 15th. But the levy is set tonight.
So in no event, it cannot go higher than the 66.4
That's correct.
million? Okay. Thank you.
So can we have a motion, please?
Ella, if I
I'm
could
sorry,
just
Jim?
follow up, and Carol, so the thing I'm worried about, Steve, and you brought this up at the school committee, is this vehicle tax legislation going through.
And as I've said to you in the past, Jim, until that legislative session ends,
No.
we're not going to be sure what they do. Is there a strong probability that there's going to be changes on motor vehicle? I can't say that I would think that that's the case. Do I think that the proposal as far as the building fees or impact fees is going to go through? I would say at this point, no. But until they adjourn their session, we never know. But then that's the same curse that we deal with in adopting budgets in advance of the General Assembly closing out its session on a yearly basis. If, in fact, they were to reduce state aid to education, it would require the school department to amend and adjust their budget and balance it. The same would hold true with the council. If we saw that there was a requirement where we were going to lose $200,000 in revenue, we would have to come back to the council with on how to balance that budget. Could it be an adjustment in the tax list? Most likely not. It would probably have to be an adjustment either with expenditure reductions or other revenue potential.
So that
Because
does come
once-
back to us.
Yeah, it would have to come back to you, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But again, we don't anticipate
Yeah.
that at this point, but we had to place it on the record.
Yeah, nice, appreciate that, thank you.
And we're okay with Polly voting on Exhibit 3? I just want to clarify.
Yeah,
to make
as
it
far
easy.
as, when you, logically, the council has adopted a budget that requires a certain dollar amount in taxes. Since the council, 4 members adopted that amount, really it's a mathematical reason on why we're at the 66.4 million. So yes, I would suggest that there would be no conflict with her voting on establishing the procedures for tax collection and levy establishment.
Thank you. So can we have a motion, please?
I move that we authorize tax collection procedures as shown in Exhibit 3.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I want to open it to the public one more time before we take this final vote. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries 500.
Ella, excuse me, just,
Jim?
should we have added to Carol's motion the $66,400,000 since we put it in there? Should we
Yeah,
amend
I-
it for that?
I-
Or
I-
not, Steve?
Yeah, I
think
asked
that's
to
a
have
given.
that in the motion because we have to have that what you're
Right.
voting on.
All right, so I think that was Carol's motion, but I'm
Well,
Dale has it, 66 million, .4.
66.4 million.
66,400,000. Well, my parting comments, I'm sorry, a roll call, please.
Council President Whaley?
Aye.
Council Vice President McAtee?
Aye.
Councilwoman Eddy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Fogarty?
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill?
Aye.
Again, Steve and Alan, a big thank you. 0% tax increase. This is absolutely a celebration. all of the town staff, Dale, our thoughts are, and well wishes for Andy Nada, who is out on a medical at this time. But this is an unbelievable budget, and we are blessed to have the staff that we have here working on behalf of our residents. I drive by the town hall many nights, and I see the lights of our staff working here, endless, tireless hours. I drive by on weekends. I see their cars parked here. So not only a big thank you to them, but also a thank you to their families for sharing our well-respected administrators and workers here at the town. I'd also like to thank the town council. There was some difficult discussions tonight. I'd like to thank the audience. I think everybody has expressed their opinions, and we've gotten through the process. So, with that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second?
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. And it is adjourned at 9 o'clock. Thank you.